Happy Saturday Night Live art shows, everybody. I'm Brooke Harker in Los Angeles, and it's the middle of the day, and I have a mask on because for the first time ever, I have a guest on my Saturday Night Live art show, and it's going to be a social distance guest, and I'm going to be telling you the story of how meeting her relates to this painting. And so first I'm going to show you the painting, and then I'm going to tell you about my amazing guest today. Whoops, that's still me. Okay, so here's the painting. It's called Buzz and Flow. It's a painting of Hong Kong, and it has a lot of thick texture. The background of it is a magenta color that I actually dedicate to Sue Vaughn. If anybody watching this knows Sue Vaughn, she's from Iowa and was one of my biggest fans. Such a bright spot, comment on everything I ever did. And when she passed away a couple of years ago, I was putting the kind of joy and love I experienced from her into the background of this painting. So while I was painting this painting of this woman walking down the street in Hong Kong, one of my neighbors stopped by, and with her, she had a friend. And her friend thought that perhaps this painting was of Korea. And then she told me a story of, let's see. My video's not working very well. You know, I think I'm, okay, anyway. So, she told me a story that was super inspirational to me, because we never know when we meet people what we're going to encounter. We never know who they are, where they come from, and there's always something special about everybody. And so she told me the story of her father and what he was known for in Korea. And so I am going to introduce you now to Esther Hyun, and let me turn this around again. Okay, welcome, Esther. She's coming up from behind my painting. So, hi, Esther.
I love your painting, and even though it's from, you know, it represents Hong Kong, to me, it represents the vibrancy of Korea. You know, the bright colors. It could be Myeongdong or a lot of places in Seoul.
Yeah. So, tell us about your father. What's his nickname?
Well, his name was Bong. So Americans, since it's spelled B-O-N-G, you know, call him Bong.
But the part you told me about Schindler.
Oh, yeah, he was, they did a KBS, Korean Broadcasting System documentary about him, oh gosh, in the late 90s, I think 98. And Schindler's List had already come out, and he was known as a Korean Schindler because he saved 100,000 lives during the Korean War, because he conceived of the Heungnam evacuation, which was a boat transport that saved 100,000 civilians. So he met this General Almond and Colonel Forney, and the three of them plotted together. At the time that he ended up as a civil affairs advisor to General Almond because he spoke English really well. At the time, there were very few Koreans that could speak English because they had had like 45, 50 years of the Japanese occupation where enemy languages like English were banned. So he learned, I'm not sure if he learned by breaking the law towards the end of the occupation or shortly afterwards. He studied in the United States, and then he came back to Korea. He enlisted as a doctor, but he was more useful as a translator. So I think he got, General Almond really wanted him, so I think he got traded for 70 trucks and like 2 tons of ammunition. But when he went to Hamhung, his hometown, they found out that the Chinese had entered the war, so everybody was retreating. And the military was retreating, and they didn't have any plan for the civilians. And my father advocated and said, if you don't rescue the civilians, they're in even more danger. They would have been better off if you hadn't shown up, but now they're going to be called American sympathizers. So every day he was really persuasive. He went to General Almond. General Almond was from Luray, Virginia, and my father had a scholarship at Virginia Commonwealth University. So it's alleged that my father spoke in the same Virginian accent. No, my father talked like this. Oh, who are you? He had deep voice. Anyway, he advocated for this evacuation. Colonel Forney was Alexander Haig described him as the foremost amphibious expert at the time. He figured out how people could get saved and how you could put them in boats and kind of pack them like sardines. And General Ammen worked under General MacArthur. And to his credit, he did not get the okay to approve the mission, but he did. And he said that it was like something he was very proud of. I think there were like 10 or 15 boats. There were a number of LSTs. The waters were all mined. And the last boat that left Korea on December 24th is called the Meredith Victory. And it's in the Guinness Book of World Records because I think either 14,000 or 14,500 were packed onto this merchant marine vessel. So it was hard. That year in Korea, it was the coldest it had been in 30 some years. If you were injured, you died. You know, the conditions were brutal. And to evacuate, what was upsetting was not everybody got evacuated. There was a train from my father's hometown to the Hamhung, to the port of Heungnam, and they were expecting 3,000 people to attend. This was mainly for civic leaders and religious leaders who would be put to death. But 5,000 packed into the trains, on top of the trains, underneath the trains. People could not walk on the roads. They had to come through the mountains because the roads were for the military to evacuate. They had to wait at the port for days, like 5 days. They were given, rice and water, but it was freezing. Some people died of the cold. In order to get to a lot of the boats, kind of like that movie that came out a few years ago, Kukje Shijang, I forget the name of it. They'd have to climb up these ropes to get into the boat. So there was even a story where a baby fell in the water and died, and in the last ship they even had a funeral for the baby before they left. But it was an amazing rescue, and after they all left the port, the Chinese, you could see them, I guess, coming, and you could, the gunfire and the flares and everything were closer. They had to bomb the port, so it was not usable. So a lot of people were left behind, including his best friend, who refused to go because his wife was pregnant. But my father was really grateful that he was able to save all these people. And what was so great is everybody took part in it, and everybody took ownership. And actually, President Moon Jae-in, his parents escaped on those boats. So they ended up in Busan or a place called Koje Island. And it was just an amazing experience.
Wow. What is it that makes you such a good storyteller? You're a teacher, right?
I'm a teacher.
Yay! Where are you a teacher at?
Nobel Middle School.
Okay.
And it's interesting because, my dad was great. He was a great doctor. He was honored by the American Society of Clinical Pathologists. He changed the laws in Pennsylvania in the 50s because when he went to take his medical boards, it was illegal for Chinese or Japanese to take the medical boards, but if you were European, you could take them. And they petitioned, well, yes, he's Asian, but he's Korean, he's not Chinese or Japanese, and your laws are racist, and they struck that restriction. So he changed the laws. And he was so good that you would change the laws, when he retired, he worked at Thomas Jefferson Medical School for years, and I think the last 2 years he'd gotten too old, so they paid him out of a different fund. The rest of us, we're all mere mortals.
Wow.
I'm a special ed teacher, but I'm just kind of like a normal person. I have never done anything the way he does.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful that you're carrying on his legacy, and it was such an honor to me. This totally gives an example of why I do what I do. Is art starts conversations, and because I was outside painting, I got to meet Esther, and I got to hear this story, and I never knew about her father. And I'm curious, any of you who watch this, did you know this story? If you know anybody who cares about history, then feel free to tag them, and I will put in the writing the name of her father, so if you want to look up any more. But I think this is just a reminder that everybody has something to contribute, and obviously sometimes, like she says, we're mere mortals. don't have saving 100,000 people in what we're doing, but we all have the opportunity to be kind and to connect with other people. And even though this painting's of Hong Kong and there's a lot of controversy in Hong Kong, you know, it still sparked something in Esther to talk to me and tell me her story. So anyway, check out the rest of Saturday Night Live art shows. Thank you for watching and have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.